Hello and welcome to these new bite-sized workshops looking at numerology. Now, the interesting thing about numerology, it's a thread that runs through all of the occult, all of the mysteries, all of mystical work, all of psychic awareness, all of trying to break down what is hidden. And though we tend not to think of it in this way, we tend to think of numerology as a relatively modern thing. And to understand numerology, we have to think about all the things we use as divination, astrology, palmistry, the tarot, psychic awareness, channeling spiritual energy, shamanism, witchcraft, because they all come under the occult. And we use the word occult when we're dealing with anything to do with these mysteries, to do with this psychic part of the world, as sounding as if it's something that belongs purely to the energy of paganism or witchcraft, when in fact the occult simply means something that is hidden, something that has to be revealed. So we go back to the very early roots of what would be ancient Mesopotamia. In fact, the Chaldeans, the ancient Egyptians, and the Hindu worked with numbers and worked with making astrological predictions that were very practical, and they were wrapped up in a spirituality of the gods, the wisdom of priests. So the Chaldeans really understood that everything was based on the 7 planets, those that were visible as far out as Saturn. But they had realised that there were other planets affecting the universe as they saw it. They wouldn't have called it our solar system by then, because the Earth was considered the centre of the universe. The sun was a planet that shone light, the moon was a planet that reflected light, and all the other planets had their meanings. Now, why are we talking about this when we're looking at numerology? Because it's to do with how numbers work. And what we will do in these bite-sized workshops of numerology, we will also break down all the things that we know at the moment about numerology and how numerology works, and the different schools of numerology as well. And some numerology is based purely on the day that you were born and associated to not just that date, but the physical day of the week and how that relates to those planets that were assigned in those ancient times by the priests, the wise men, the people practicing the occult. And numbers have a very interesting energy when we look at this from this point of view. Now, there are other forms of numerology that have grown over the years, and we'll work with some of that as well. But not to confuse it, we'll end up working with one strand of numerology, though we have to look at everything else. And we have to incorporate palmistry, we have to incorporate astrology, we have to incorporate the tarot to get a grip of what astrology means and the effect that astrology is going to have on us as individuals and how we can empower ourselves. And you can look at every number and you can find that there is a magical story associated to every number. But everybody knows about, or considers, the number 7 to be a lucky number. And it's interesting how that has come about, and it is to do with the Chaldean, a place that later became Babylonia, and were the seat of Babylon, was probably the most famous of the ancient world cities, but not necessarily the most significant. It's its location that is very important. But the Chaldeans, the Egyptians, and the Hindu took numbers, and it's woven into the fabric of the life that we live today. There is no logical reason that a week should be made up of 7 days, except the 7 was considered magical. It also has built the foundation that doesn't exactly fit, but slightly fits. So of the way the weeks work within the months, the way that the months create the year, and the way that the sun passes through each constellation of the zodiac. And it's all these things that are wrapped up that make numerology what it is. So coming back to the number 7, because initially there were 7 planets, and it perhaps is that gives us the 7 days of the week, because each day of the week is named after one of the planets, excluding Earth. And then later on, some of those names have altered and changed to incorporate the energies of other deities as well that came later. So, if we think about Sunday, obviously it's associated to the sun. In Latin, Domenica is the day of the sun, but that's actually referring to deity, so associating the sun as the deity. And there's been lots of references in religions where they put the sun at the centre of everything. Monday, moon day, or even from the Latin, lunadi. So you see how the days of the week are constructed out of the planets, and then we go from Monday to Tuesday. Now that's interesting. We call it Tuesday, but it's Mars Day because it's associated to Marte in the Latin, meaning the Mars Day, the day of Mars. And then Wednesday is Woden. So we have Wednesday, Northern Hemisphere. But in Central Europe and Southern Europe, of course, using Wednesday is Mercury Day. And then Thursday, Jovedi, the day of Jove, Jupiter. Friday, Venice. Did I say Venice? Venus. Because it's Venedi. So slip of the tongue there. And then Saturn for Saturday, the Sabbath, the day of rest. So we've talked about the Egyptians, the Chaldeans, and we've talked about the Hindu, because we know more about the use of measuring distance and time and looking at the sky for plotting and planning. Whereas in Judaism, of course, the Sabbath is the day of rest. And it's interesting because some of the mysteries that the ancients knew or understood, and their ability to calculate things that are so difficult to calculate today, yet they managed to do it, was probably through a form of channeling. And because there is lots of references, especially from the Bible, and especially the early books of the Bible, the Talmud or the Torah, which very much talks about how God would commune with some of the prophets, Moses, Elijah, and so on. So all these things have a magical thing to them. There is also occult, because a lot of it is hidden. It was kept secret by the priest. Maybe, it was a way of the ruling classes to sort of keep control and keep their destiny under their hold, so that they could keep everything as they wanted to move forward. So anyway, when we start looking at numerology, and we're going to do that in the upcoming bite-sized workshops, and we're going to go through each number and the meaning of each number, but we'll also draw in the different influences that talk about what each number means and how some numerology is calculated on just the day that you're born. So if you're born on the first day of the month, that would be a numerology of 1. But if you put the whole of your date of birth together, it creates another numerology, and that comes from another school as well. So we will go through this so there's an understanding and how in the tarot numbers are significant, how in obviously astrology numbers are significant, and how palmistry comes into that as well. But also we think about the use of elements, and if we think about the Wiccan way of working and witchcraft, how numbers are important there, the calculation of the movement of the moon and the seasons and the quarters. So we have the energy of the equinox. So all this we will talk about, but what the intention is not just to say the number means this and this is how the number relates, but to try and understand what's behind it so you get a stronger sense of why you can use those numbers. And here's something too, it incorporates, if you understand who you are, it allows you to make yourself better. You can sort of enhance the positives and diminish the negatives. And then working on the energy of numerology to create a better mindfulness. And it comes back to this old adage of as you think, so you are. Now, it's never as simple as that, but we'll endeavour during these workshops to try and unpick the occult. Thank you so much, and I'll be speaking to you soon.